Ladies and gentlemen,
this is Gamertag Radio.
All right, so we're back here at Gamertag Radio, episode 1522, and we have a special guest here because, previously I've been involved with being as a part of the jury at a Tribeca Games Festival a couple years back, and we have one of the people in charge of the festival, and we have Casey Barron. So, Casey, please introduce yourself for those that are, wondering about you and also about Tribeca Game Festival.
Danny, thanks so much for having me on, man. I have a lot of love and respect for you, so I appreciate you opening up the platform for me. I'm the senior programmer of film and games at the festival, so I oversee our U.S. Narrative Features competition, but I'm also the head of games. So if you have any games, interests, inquiries, what have you, I am your guy at Tribeca. And so that includes putting together our slate of official selections. In prior years, we've had anywhere from 7 to 9 games be part of our official selection slate, which is all exhibited physically at our games gallery this year at Pier 57, as well as special events that we host. So, in the past, we've had Mike Flanagan in conversation with Sam Lake. We've had the creative heads of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy from Square Enix also come through, Hamaguchi-san and Kitase-san, big fans of them. So this year we have Nia DaCosta in conversation with creative director Mikhail Kasurinen from Remedy Entertainment, and we're talking all things Control Resonant, man. I'm very excited about it. I'm a big fan of the initial Control, so that's going to be a really fun thing we have this year, and then we have some other things lined up, but that's all under my purview at Tribeca.
Weren't you also guys have the folks from Founders of Rockstar? Are they going to be in there too?
Dan Houser himself and
yes.
Laszlo are going to be...
that's a big one.
Yeah, definitely. We're very excited about that. Absurd Ventures. We're talking about the Absurdiverse, man. They're doing some really cool stuff over there. I can't wait for Dan and the crew to really get into some of the nitty-gritty about how they're approaching their creation of animated series. They have an adult animated series they're currently working on. The Absurdiverse that actually just had a really cool premiere moment at Netflix is a joke. And they'll be talking about that alongside, the mindset that they have towards making games, but also how they're infiltrating the graphic novels and further literature spaces. They're going full transmedia, which is something we're really excited about from the Tribeca POV. We always like to support creators who are thinking on the cutting edge on that multi-hyphenate sort of through line, and they've got that through and through.
Yeah, and how has been like the process of let's go with the games first, because that's something that I know I was part of, and I got to see the behind the scenes a little bit of that. Yeah, but how is the process of selecting these games to be part of the festival? Is it something that you guys go out there and meet with like indie developers, or is it something where the indie developers will submit it to you guys to see if it could get selected for the festival?
Great question, man, because I know for a lot of people it can be a little bit of a mystifying situation. And so for us, we tackle it from a number of perspectives. We track a number of creators, studios, and projects internally. Like, Danny, you know well enough, to get games created, you're talking about maybe 5 to 6 year development cycles, maybe even longer, right? So with that in mind, we track projects very much long lead in that sense. So there are times when we have connections with a studio or we'll forge those connections and try to get them to send something in so we could jump in and hopefully get some fun with the games, some hands-on playable time with the games. So we go through it from that route, but we also have indie developers, other developers across the world who will find the submissions platform open and will submit blindly. And, a number of the projects we have this year actually came in directly through that purview. So Drifted, which comes to us from Taiwan/Japan, and Song, which comes to us from Italy. Both those projects were completely blind entries into the competition this year. There are no Ghosts of the Grand, also from our friends in the UK, a similar situation. Shout out to Friday Sunday. I think that's going to be a really fun game once everyone gets their hands on with it. So it's usually a mix of both, but we try to really keep our doors open for anyone who might be interested in the process. And for me, I play every game that comes in, and we consider things both as far as your general video game that has inputs from a keyboard or controller. We also look at things that utilize eye tracking technology, VR. So there are lots of possibilities for developers depending on what you're working on. And I also have a small team that works under me. Shout out Lydia Kwa and Philip Bali. Phil and I actually did a games writing masterclass together, so that's how we came up knowing each other. But they both have their unique purview that they bring to the experience to help me flesh out the overall breadth of the program every year. And so it really starts in September in earnest when the competitions reopen and goes all the way through that April sort of timeline until we announce. But we're tracking things year round. It's shocking to some, but I'm already thinking about the next one as we sit here.
Yeah, it's cool to see that, man. And was there any like success stories of some of those games that were selected in the past, didn't win, or some of them that got to win an award, but still became a success after the game was released to the public?
Yeah, I mean, you have the obvious examples of something like Blueprints, right? Which Blueprints came to us and had a lot of success throughout the program. And now you see everything that's happened for that team and Tonda out in the wild. We are very good friends with Raw Fury. We have another good game with them this year, Rivage, that we're very excited about. And so it's just been amazing to see that level of impact for that team. You think of a project like Absalom. I remember when Absalom got announced, that trailer dropped, I want to say like maybe March, right as we were in the midst of locking the program last year. And as soon as I saw it, I knew personally that I had a lot of interest, so tried to make any sort of inroads with the folks at Dotemu, and they were kind enough to jump on a call, send us a build to play, and we went through that consideration process, and they didn't win the jury prize, but look at all the success that project has been able to find, and I'm excited to hear more and more people come out and say, oh, it was really cool to see that at Tribeca. So we really have a lot of different sort of avenues or through lines for folks as far as coming into the program and having some success.
Yeah, I like that you guys mix, like you said earlier, have the people from the movie industry to also be part of this, the games festival. So like, with panels and so on. But I remember also when I was a juror, I believe it was Chloe that was also one of the jurors. She, she's a well-known actress. What's her full name? Chloe. I can't remember her full name, but she, she is actually a gamer, because I remember we got together to talk about the games that we like and so on, right? We were voting, and she was just breaking down like things that she was doing. Because usually I'm like, man, actors are probably they're not gonna have no time to be playing games and so on. But she's just actually like a gamer, right? So for you guys, the process of also selecting the right people to be part of the jury, how's that process too?
Yeah, I think that was Chloe Grace Moretz, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's her.
Big shout out to her. She was awesome to work with through that line of things. Really, we try to look at it through a few different perspectives. One, it's like, who has the real fervor for the industry, for games? I talked about this a bit on another podcast, but you have to appreciate games as the medium that it is, that input from and control from the, pardon the pun, from the audience or from the player. That is really what drives the experience, right? Is that mindfulness towards choice and interaction. And so we're always looking for people from the jury perspective who appreciate that, who are excited by that and what it can bring as far as an entertainment or narrative or storytelling experience. So really thinking along those lines is sort of the bedrock or foundation of it. And then, at least for me personally, I'll say trying to think of folks who are active in the industry that can look potentially as a creative director, designer. We have Dingo Bacabo, who's joining us on the jury this year. Very excited to have him on board, especially as he's in the midst on all things Marvel's Blade. But that's a sort of archetype you can think of. We also have folks who may be more on the business-oriented side, behind the scenes, whether that means an executive specifically working at a game studio, or maybe they are in a different entertainment route that has a games adjacent sort of build or mold to it. So also thinking about that, because I think we're also trying to come from the mindset of, is there anything the jury can bring to the table to help these games, to help these creators in some shape or form? And also trying to create bridges, right? All conversations about adaptations, all conversations about expanding universes. It's always exciting to have folks who can come into the jury and really have a mindset towards what can help push those developers, push those teams towards that next sort of rung on the ladder, if you would, whether that's adaptation, whether that's particularly even just distributing their game and getting it out there. There are a few different modalities that we think about that tie to, but really the foundation is excitement for games, excitement to really jump in to these experiences and have some fun with these titles.
Yeah, I'm very excited to hear about the talk from Remedy about Control, because I remember a couple years back I went to the Alan Wake 2 talk, and it was completely sold out. There was like no seats available, I remember, for that one. Yeah. And there's been a lot of talks like that in the past that was part of Tribeca Games Festival. So how's that process too? And was there anything from the past that you think stood out that was like very successful talk for the festival?
Yeah, I mean, as far as prior talks that have been successful, I mentioned the Mike Flanagan, Sam Lake talk. That was just incredible to be in the room personally, as a fan of both those creators, and just to hear them go back and forth on process, how they approach theme, how they approach characters and things like that. I'm that nerd who will sit on YouTube for hours just watching like THR roundtables and stuff like that. That's my stuff. So I was very excited just from that POV, but even to have, like I mentioned, creative heads from Square Enix on the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy there, JRPGs very much were the thing for me growing up, right? Like the early Final Fantasies, Final Fantasy X in particular was very huge for me. And so just giving them the space and opportunity, especially considering those guys don't really have that much opportunity to, meet fans, especially in North America. They do a lot of stuff locally to Japan. So it was just a thrill to have them here and to see the excitement from the fandom to come out and support them. After that talk, we had those guys hang around for like an hour and a half outside signing autographs and things. It was at SVA Theater, and the line went down the block and around the corner. Like, people just could not get enough of them. So those are two very cool examples. But as far as getting the Control Resonant event off the ground, really, we've had a great relationship with Remedy for years now, even before that event we did for Alan Wake 2. So we're always excited and talking to them about what they've got going on, how we may be able to, create some cool moments around their plans and their strategies. So at the Game Awards last year, we ran into Tomas, shout out Tomas from the Remedy team, and they were starting to, put the news out there. We got the big announcement trailer at the Game Awards last year. So it really started the gears turning and figuring out what we might be able to do with them this year. And Nia, I mean, like, she's a Tribeca alum, Nora Ephron Award winner. She is just an incredible talent. I don't know if you've seen 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple is yet, but
I have.
Yeah, like, what a film. And I've been a fan of her since Little Woods. Hedda is phenomenal. So I am just a really huge fan of what she can do. And she's a huge fan of the franchise. And also actually a member of our games advisory board. So we have a lot of connections with Nia. So it just made a lot of sense to bring her and Mikhail together, give them space to really chop it up. And, I'm really excited for what we're going to be able to bring to the fans there. And there will definitely be a couple surprises for those who can make it into the room for that one.
Yeah. And look, I went to the last one, and they had a trailer just for the festival. Yep. If you weren't there, that's it. It was not online available or anything like that. So that's the thing, that you will get the exclusive there, attending these type of events. So this is really, really cool. Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing Sam Lake at the Tribeca Film Festival. I think he went to a movie or something. I can't remember. He took a picture with Robert De Niro. You could tell he was like excited to meet him in person and everything, man. So it's really cool to see the mix of games and also movies together, So and this is the 25th anniversary for you guys, right? Like, it's
yeah, man, big 25th anniversary. For me, I've always had an eye towards the festival even before I worked here. This will be my fourth festival. And so to get to be a small part of the history of this now and be a steward specifically of the games program, it's really exciting and frankly very humbling for me. But I love that we get to create those opportunities. You mentioned, Bob, having that moment with Sam. Like the fact that we have founders who are so interested to be involved and to support these different mediums that we're bringing in and these new opportunities for creators is really thrilling. And just to have the perspective of a Sam Lake interact with Bob, or to have Mike Flanagan with Sam Lake, so on and so forth. Like you can just keep doing all these different medium of the minds, and also hopefully create a wider understanding of creative processes, right? I think for a lot of people, they think about games in this singular way. Maybe it's tied to they only play LinkedIn games on their phone and that's just their train commute. Or you're someone who actually has a PS5 and a Series X and everything, and you have a certain mindset towards it. But to create pathways for everyone to understand more about what it takes to actually make games or to make films and really help a general mindsets towards both of those paths is really cool. So I'm glad we're able to do that and create some sort of foundations towards that in a really sort of authentic and organic way.
Yeah, I know last year, and I was also helping with this. I know you guys had Brass Lion Entertainment and folks that worked on Dispatch. They did a panel together, right?
Yep.
I think Just Blaze had a different panel with Logic. So are we going to see those? I forgot the name of it, but are you going to have those type of smaller talks too during the festival? Or is it going to be a little bit different this year?
Yeah, that's through our storytelling summit. So last year, our producer on that was Zach Mandanak. Zach is a really cool local indie filmmaker, but also a local guy who works at a lot of events. So he was really one of the shepherds for us in bringing that program to life last year. This year, Shayna Weingass is the producer on that. And really, it is an opportunity where we get to say there are all these different sandboxes you all play in, but there are similarities, right? So let's actually have a conversation between those similarities. So you alluded to, right, Just Blaze and Logic in the conversation last year. I believe that was around like composition and sort of score soundscapes and creations of that. This year we have a couple of that we're bringing through the Storytelling Summit, and actually that also includes the Absurd Ventures Luminaries talk with Dan Hauser, Laszlo, and a few of their creative partners. We're also going to hold a conversation on maximalist aesthetics, actually, that I'm really excited about. Because one thing, talking about themes that organically popped up this year, all these games, or a number, of these games that we have this year, all have this maximalist approach to the aesthetics, the art that they're really driving forward. And I thought that was actually a really cool thing, considering we've seen through the 2010s, especially, and certainly in the early 2020s, this real doubling down on this minimalist look, right? And I don't know, I think, Danny, you remind me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're into NBA as well. But I've noticed in the NBA, a lot of the logos have gone from these complex, cool, maximalist designs to this real minimalist look, right? And you can see it across industries, and especially in fashion. And so I thought it was really interesting that you're seeing this through line in games of this maximalist approach. You have something like Chakuna supporting me from another world and the Strange Scaffold team, and how they look at games and art and what they're trying to push forward there. So I just felt that there was a number of examples and a way that we could have a cool conversation framed around that, both in a micro context of games, but also in a macro sort of societal context. And then we also have another talk where we're going to be looking at world building through soundscapes and sound design. Loft Song is a game I'm really excited about because it has this sort of mismatch of all these different ideas that coalesce into this really singular experience. I think if you're someone who's a fan of like Chants of Sennar, if you're a fan of a project like Limbo and Inside, you're going to find a lot of sort of creative parallels to what this team has here. But a lot of it is rooted in the matching between this incredible sound design and score that were created with this brutalist architecture that they also have front and forward. So we will have like a few different pieces or places where people can find some stunning conversations this year, both again through the summit and as well through the Control Resonant talk.
Yeah, I know in the past you guys had, I believe, Hideo Kojima was involved with, I think he had a talk over there, right? And yeah. I believe, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, was it Rockstar was also involved for Eleanor back?
That was the very first event.
Very first event. Yeah. So let's talk about how much has changed from those days to now. How much has changed? And you were attending these events too back in those days before you started working at the festival?
No, sadly, I did not attend the Eleanor event. What a thing that would have been back in the day. That was in 2011 when we did that. So between then and now, I'd say one of the things that's changed is just the openness from different industries or different creatives to jump into the pool that is games, right? You know, I remember back in those days, there were still conversations about whether games are art. Like that was a legitimate thing that you were finding as far as headlines and different articles. Now, it may pop up once every couple of years for some stupid reason. But by and large, that's not really a conversation that we're seeing now. Thankfully, there is a very rooted understanding that games very much are art, like any other artistic medium. And let's not even get to the breakdown of all the different components that make a game. But I think that's something that's certainly shifted culturally, right? Where there's more of a mindset and willingness to understand what this medium is. So there's certainly that purview. And then from an organizational standpoint, the amount of support we're throwing behind games, right? We had that one event with LA Noire with Rockstar in 2011. Now we have a full official selections program of 12 projects. We have a special event with Remedy. We have multiple side talks or panels on the Storytelling Summit side. So I think it's also from that POV, there's clearly a hunger from audiences to dive in and understand more about this, but also to just have fun and experience it in a communal sense. And that's what we want to continue to try to drive. For me, games have, similarly to film, actually always been about community, whether that is community right next to me on a couch and we're doing a split screen co-op experience, or community in a larger sense, whether that's, again, in sticking with multiplayer or just talking about the different experiences you're having with a single player project with friends. Like, I remember when the God of War 2018 reboot came out, and the amount of time I spent talking to friends about just all the surprises going into that project and comparing it to, like, for me, the God of War 3 opening, one of the greatest openings I've ever experienced in a game. Like, that fight with Poseidon, craziness. So the ability to just talk about all of that stuff, right? Like, that's really fun and exciting. And I think that's what continues to drive us internally, is to continue to foster spaces and opportunities for those sorts of moments.
Yeah, and the cool thing for me from the outside, you know, because I also, when I was part of the jury, I went to check out these games where it was playable, to see the people playing and everything. They're two things. One is the people that created those games, they don't have opportunities like that to show their games. Like, this is going to be like the first time they're going to show it to the world, right? At an event like this, right? But also you're going to have those that can attend events that's happening here in LA or in other places, but it's happening in New York, to get hands-on themselves at this event. So that's something I think people should definitely check this out, because it's like a very, very cool opportunity, not only for the gamers, but also for the creators of these projects, right?
Absolutely. You know, at Pier 57, our dates this year are June 10th through the 14th, and we're open 12 to 5 p.m. that Wednesday, that opening night, and the same for our closing night that Sunday, 12 to 7 p.m. every other day there in between. But yeah, we have creators coming from all over the world, and to your point, you know, it's not something where they get an opportunity like this often, but also we try to be mindful, going back to that idea of community, that it allows them to get in front of people. Hopefully folks add it to the wish list. Please add these games to your wish list on Steam and wherever else. But beyond that, also, like, get a sense of watching someone actually play their game. And we don't require our teams, our developers, to come in and actually like be on site, be on hand every waking moment, because we do want them to experience the wider festival. There's so much that we do, and we also want to invite them to connect with other creatives who may be on the ground. But yeah, it's really meant to continue to foster that. And I will say it's a very prideful thing for us that we don't put any production costs or needs on these teams for it to be a part of the exhibit. We take care of all of that. That's not something where, you know, I've heard the stories of developers going to other conferences, to other events, and needing to bring about all of the tech needs, all of the build out production needs to really be a part of that. We really want to make sure for them, if they can make it, please come through, have a great time, hang out, experience the city, experience the festival. But it's really about that idea of trying to drive as much fun forward for them as possible.
No, Casey, man, I just want to say thank you, man. But for those that would like to get more information about how they could buy the tickets and also attend these events, where's like the best place to go?
Just go to our website, tribecafilm.com. There's going to be a lot of information as far as the different games. We'll have a little blurb for each game available. The tickets are only required for the Control Resonant event this year, and then the Storytelling Summit is a badge access event. So there is a badge required to attend all those other talks, including the Absurd Ventures talk. But for the games, the playable builds at Pier 57, free and open to the public. So if folks are in the city, they're welcome to just come through, hang out. It's going to be a really great time. But yeah, that's June 10th through the 14th this year. All details on the site.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Casey.
Danny, appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Problem.